to the members of the committee, I know that you're going to have an extensive discussion with 80 hours of hearings, and I believe it is a great day for New Zealand that our treaty is being debated. In a free society, people should be able to have their say about the most important issues of the day and all of the laws under which they live. Perhaps one way that I can be helpful through submitting on this bill is to explain a little bit about the why, the motivation for bringing it here, and what I hope that it will achieve. And I want to start that by quoting a passage from Hansard, which says that we meet today at the pinnacle of several centuries of progress. We have moved towards the light of liberty by removing distinctions in law that once treated people differently, depending on their religious conviction, their gender, or their race. And most recently, this Parliament has decided to remove gender from the marriage laws. Many countries have never achieved that, but it is extraordinary that as if engaged in some form of historical shuttle run, it was we who were first to touch the cone that are now rushing back to create new distinctions in law. I refer to those who claim that the only way to achieve material equality between the Maori side and the British side of my ancestry is to create more legal inequality. No doubt they have noble intentions, but public policy should be measured only by results. That was me just over 10 years ago, 31 years old, in my maiden statement to Parliament. Now, you might think that a little bit indulgent, but I want to be clear that my beliefs behind this bill and my belief in freedom under the law is a long-held and sincere belief. What we've witnessed in recent decades as the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal have sought to define the principles of the treaty is incompatible with freedom under the law, with a free society where each of us have equal rights. Since the Court of Appeal said that the treaty created a, quote, partnership between races, or a relationship akin to a partnership, that notion has become commonplace. Dame Jacinda Ardern, as Prime Minister, just 5 years ago, quoted this idea of a partnership between races at Waitangi. Members of our current Parliament believe that this country would be better off as a, quote, tiriti-centric Aotearoa, where people are divided into tangata whenua, land people, and tangata tiriti, treaty people. Just this summer, we saw a concert where the ticket prices were differentiated, with different prices for tangata whenua and tangata tiriti, with different amounts to pay. We see consultation on resource management consents, the structure of local government, and some central government departments taking this divisive approach. Dividing people into racial groups is the definition of racism, just as sexism is to judge a person first by their sex and then by their other characteristics. The belief that roles in society should be preserved with race as the primary qualifier is the definition of racism, something we abhor, should give nothing to, and should all do everything in our power to expunge from our society. When you see people as a member of a group first and an individual second, you miss interesting things about them. You also open the door to dehumanizing oppression. It reminds me of Plato's chilling republic, where people are divided into classes, forced to act in certain ways in order to preserve the totalitarian state. Now, we're certainly nowhere near that, but it reminds us of the direction in which you travel once you go down this partnership between races conception of our founding document. Now, I have no doubt that you will be told that freedom and equality under the law are not actually that useful because they do not guarantee material equality. They don't guarantee that everybody will have equal wealth, or perhaps in some cases even sufficient wealth. 2 points about that. First of all, no, freedom under the law doesn't guarantee wealth. It doesn't guarantee material equality. But what it does just so happen to do across a range of times, cultures, and places is create the best opportunities in human history for disadvantaged people to achieve prosperity. And that is, there is so much data on that now across many countries, many decades, many centuries, that people who deny that really aren't taking the conversation seriously. The second point is that even if the treaty as a partnership is put forward as a way of helping to achieve material equality, you'll find that it is not necessary, nor is it sufficient. It's not necessary because it is possible to help disadvantaged people without dividing a country into two groups based on ancestry. Practically every country in the world, to some extent or other, is in the business of trying to help people through government intervention that need help. But second of all, it's not sufficient to create material equality within New Zealand because many people who are not Maori are nonetheless disadvantaged. And I could come up with many examples, but none more poignant than the fact that today is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. And just yesterday, I joined with the New Zealand Holocaust Centre to commemorate that anniversary with several people who were survivors who sought refuge in this country. Now, that is obviously an extreme example, but it makes the point that many people, for many reasons, find themselves in New Zealand disadvantaged. Not all of them are Maori, in fact, far from it, and not all people who are doing well are not Maori. Using race or ancestral background as a way of deciding who needs help is simply ineffective. You may also be told that this Parliament does not have a right to make a law on this bill, make a law about the treaty principles. That really goes to the heart of the debate. If you believe that New Zealand is some sort of constitutional oddity with two partners and different people having different political rights based on their ancestry, then of course you won't want Parliament to make a ruling about what the Treaty of Waitangi means to us in the current day. If, on the other hand, you might be tempted to ask those people, first of all, what are they doing here? Second of all, how exactly would they like this society to work? And where are the examples of societies that divide people by ancestry that are more successful for it? And finally, you might want to ask them, have they met the billions of people around the world, many of whom are fighting right now, very literally, for parliamentary democracy? Those people would very much like to have a parliament like this that is the arbiter of what our laws mean in the modern age. And finally, this bill, some will say, may not pass this time. We shall see. But I can tell you that you are part of something important and inevitable. In the past, in parliaments, including this one, we've seen, for example, the end of slavery first introduced in, I think, 1792, eventually passed in the early 1800s. We've seen homosexual law reform first introduced to this Parliament in about 1973, passed in 1986. We've seen end-of-life choice first introduced in 1995, passed in 2019. Once you have an idea that relates to emancipating people and freeing them from systems that oppress them by giving some privilege to one group at the expense of another, which the partnership principle most certainly does, then eventually the tide for human freedom, the tide that people will want to join because they see that each of us are born with time on earth to make the most of our talents so we can be as happy and flourish as much as possible in that time that is ours and ours alone. That idea eventually will succeed. And the work that you do over the next 80 hours of hearings and the next 5 months of deliberating, I believe, will make a very important contribution to that movement. So I hope that you will enter into it in good spirit and do it well. And also, having sat on 1 or 2 committees in my time, I have tried not to make the mistake of talking for too much of the allocated time so that there can be questions.
Thank you, Minister. We do have time for questions, first from Ginny Anderson and then Debbie Ngāre-Wapaka.
O tēnā koe, David. Nau mai hara mai ki tēnei committee. Ko taku pāta kia koe e pāna the second article of the Treaty of Waitangi. I'd really like to hear from you, your understanding of what the second article of the Treaty of Waitangi means to you, both in the English and in the Te Reo Māori version.
So first of all, the Maori version guaranteed tirorangatira over the paonga that Maori had in 1840. The English version was a little bit more specific in its language, talking about lands and villages and fisheries and so on. I always rely on Te Tiriti, and specifically on Professor Kafuru's translation of it into modern English in 1987. The definition of taonga obviously has been something that's been debated over the years. Should it, for example, include radio spectrum as a taonga, even though that was not a technology that anybody was using in 1840. What this bill does, however, is make it clear that we are committed to continuing to honouring the rights that hapu and iwi Māori had in 1840. What we'd like to do is ensure that that happens within a democratic framework where each New Zealander has the same rights to make claims to their property, to their language, to their culture. And so we're committed to protecting Maori rights, but within a framework of equality before the law for all.
Thank you, Minister. I'll go to other members. Debbie Ngāre-Wapaka then.
Tēnā koe, David. My question is, if the Treaty Principles Bill, or the Treaty Principles removed from legislation, how would Māori rights and interests be protected in areas like health, education and resource management?
Well, they would have exactly the same rights as any other person in this country. It might interest you to know that shortly I hope to visit Te Rito in the far, far north. This is an organisation that runs now 4 very successful early childhood centres for Māori, and what they've managed to achieve is winning the trust of local people. Being from Northland, scepticism against government is alive, well and very healthy. What's important is that we haven't done this in a way that is only for Māori. It doesn't rely on being a part of a partnership. There's actually 7 partnership schools opening in the next few days for all different groups and backgrounds. Some have an ethnic link, others don't. What's important is that in order to help all people, we need to do much, much better in the housing market, in the way we provide healthcare, in the way that we provide education. That can be achieved with a lot more devolution. It doesn't require
Thank you. If I
us
can
to
just
separate the
interject
country
for-
into a
Thank you,
partnership
Minister.
between 2 races.
I'm just conscious that we're really shy of time.
Sure,
If I can just
sure.
supplement and clarify. My question was actually specifically about Māori rights and interests and how they would be protected. But I guess if I could follow up on that, is then how would this bill improve outcomes for Māori communities who already face significant disparities? And how will this bill ensure Māori are not further marginalised?
Well, first of all, how would it improve outcomes for Māori? I think having a free society where everyone's equal before the law, where you can get a resource consent to build a home for someone or start a business with less of the rigmarole that many people complain about right now because I've effectively got 2 consultation obligations. That is prosperity. That is good for all people. How would it
I
protect?
specifically asked for Māori communities, Minister.
Well, I think the difficulty we might be having here is that I believe that Māori communities, Māori are people, we are New Zealanders.
And we have our own
And in a more,
Okay,
yes, a lot of
let's
people
ask.
have their own community, but in a society with greater prosperity, greater growth, where it's easier to own a home, where we have more devolution and flexibility of social services, it actually benefits everybody. So we don't need to divide ourselves by race
So the
in order
Minister
to
doesn't
achieve.
acknowledge Māori communities.
Sorry,
Is that
Debbie,
what you're saying?
we'll end up on that point. We'll go to Tamara Ball, probably the last question.
Morena. My question is, so in your speech and in your interpretation and understanding of the treaty, why is it that you continue to subscribe to the same belief that the treaty was signed between races, despite the fact that so many academics around the treaty continue to reinforce the idea that the treaty was signed between 2 sovereign nations, but you continue to criticise people's use of race, but that is the same logic that you apply to your interpretation and understanding of the treaty. So why is it okay for you to do it and nobody else?
You've actually got 3 different ideas here. First of all, let's get the historical fact. The treaty was signed by just over 500 chiefs on behalf of their hapu. Some of them had also signed He Whakatuputu, so the Declaration of Independence. Others had not. There was a lot of disagreement within Māoridom. They signed on behalf of their hapu. That's the historical fact. The idea that there was 2 sovereign nations, I'm sorry, I don't subscribe to that. The third idea you've introduced is one that you have said that I adhere to, that it's a partnership between races. And I'm against that. When I say that, I'm quoting the Court of Appeal who said that. I'm quoting the
Thank you,
people who
Minister.
say we
Sorry to
should be
interrupt,
divided.
but we've reached the end of time for our hearing. So I'd like to extend our appreciation for you being here and wish you well.
All right. Thank you very much, and good luck, guys.
It feels like he was very much didn't like to deviate from his talking points.
Yeah, it really does.
He doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Well, I found that quite interesting to state that, but I don't believe there was a treaty between 2 sovereign nations.
No, it was a dominant nation already. We were sovereign. We've never given up our sovereignty. Tino Rangatiratanga is still our sovereign. You know, we have Tino Rangatiratanga. We have Haitiakitanga. We have all those tangas that connect us as a Māori people, but we're not Māori. We were never Māori. Māori means original or normal.
Yeah,
We were tangata whenua, and before that we were tangata moana. And before that we were tangata huri. We came from ancient Peru, Egypt, China, Japan, all over.
Yeah. Yeah.
We settled here in the South Pacific because it was a great place to settle.
Yeah. Now, were you in the select committee room at this point of the hearing or not?
So I was in there in the afternoon.
Okay.
So this is early in the morning. This is 8 a.m. in the morning that this happened.
Yeah.
Or 8,
Oh,
between 8 and 9.
according to the clock in the background.